Can you all still see the slides? Okay,
Yeah, it
perfect.
looks great. Thanks.
Perfect, of course.
Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll get started in just a couple minutes. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Otolaryngology Program Directors Organization Recruitment Update. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're so excited to see you. We're getting excited for the upcoming academic year starting tomorrow for all of us. And we have this student webinar tonight. We have another faculty webinar tomorrow night. I'm Brad De Silva. I'm the Program Director at Ohio State University, and I'm our Opto Chair-elect. We will have another faculty webinar tomorrow night, and then these webinars will be recorded so that you can refer to them in the future. Just so you can see, our Opto Council is made up of our Opto Chair, Dr. Brett Comer from University of Kentucky. Our Opto Chair, immediate past chair, is Dr. Judith Liu from WashU in St. Louis. And then our remaining Opto Council members are Deborah Watson, Dr. Deborah Watson from University of California, San Diego, Dr. Tiffany Chow from Penn, Dr. Michael Platt from Boston University, and Dr. Michael Yim from LSU Shreveport. Beth, can you advance the slide? So our tonight's speakers are those who I just mentioned here. So myself, Dr. Comer, Dr. Chow, and Dr. Yim. And hopefully we can provide you a varied, diverse experience and background to what to expect over the coming months for this interview cycle. Next slide. So a bit of online resources. Please check out the SUO and the Opto websites where you can see a list of residency program directors, emails, coordinators, and all the residency programs are listed there. Also, there'll be resources and tools for the interview cycle and also for recruitment. It'll have information about signaling, information about our interview release date. And then the interview calendar is a nice tool where programs will add their interview dates. You can refer to those and plan. And a lot of those will be on there even before the interview release date. Next slide. So our agenda for the evening, first, Dr. Comer is going to talk about application recommendations, and then we'll transition into interview format, preference signaling. I'm going to talk a little bit about our new standardized letter recommendation form that's been revised this year. We'll finish with the combined interview offer date, and then there'll be time for questions and hopefully some answers. We feel free to put questions into the chat, and we can answer those at the very end. So next slide. Now I'll turn it over to Dr. Comer. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. And folks, I'm at a baseball park right now with the sun shining in my face, so I apologize if you can't see me very well on Zoom. But I'm going to start out by going over some of the application recommendations. This varies a little bit every year, but if you look at the bullet points, number one, we would recommend on Opto to get your complete application in by the date of the application release to programs, which is September 23. Now, we fully understand, and what happens every year is there are some med schools where the dean's letter doesn't come out till a week or two later. Don't panic about that. If you're at a med school that does that, we are used to it. Any program director who's been around a while is completely aware that this happens year after year. But to the best of your ability, we recommend trying to get all the parts of your application in that you can. Now, if you're in a September rotation and you're wanting a letter of recommendation from that, and it can't come in until after that date, then that's how it is. But otherwise, try to get everything in that you can. Speaking of letters of recommendation, we do recommend between 3 and 4 letters, and typically these should come from otolaryngologist or somebody who knows you very well or with whom you spend an extended period of time. So certainly if you've done a lot of research somewhere, and spent a year or two in the lab, that may be a very reasonable letter of recommendation to get. The reason we mention otolaryngologists is that the program director community, and in fact, the world of otolaryngology in general, is a pretty small world. And so a lot of us know each other. We see each other at national meetings. And when we read each other's letters year after year, we are kind of used to seeing things that are said in those letters. And then in terms of away rotations, no letters are required from away rotations, except for applicants who don't have a home program. That said, if you feel like you've really connected with somebody on a away rotation, then certainly get a letter from that rotation. So, okay, next slide, please. In terms of STEP scores, everyone should have passed the USMLE 1 or the COMLEX equivalent. Your USMLE Step 2 score should be available when applications are released to programs. And then otolaryngology as a group, Opto has decided to opt out of geographic preferencing this year. I'm not even going to dive into that this year since it should be a non-issue. Okay, next slide. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Chow.
Thanks, Dr. Comer. So I just want to provide a little bit of historical context for the interview format, which we'll go into in the next couple of slides. So a couple cycles ago in the 2023 to 24 interview season, programs, it was about 50-50 in terms of what programs were offering. So just coming out of COVID, obviously. So half were about in person, half were virtual. And so that year, Opto partnered with AAMC to do an applicant survey. And so there was a decent response rate, about 40%. And then there was a strong preference for in-person interviews. And obviously, applicants had a desire for some financial support during this interview process, because as we know, there can be quite a cost associated with traveling to various interviews, which some of it has been mitigated by signaling, which Dr. Yim is going to get into in the next couple slides. But overall, very strong preference for doing in-person interviews. Next slide, Beth. And so in terms of the specific question of whether interview format impacted ranking decisions, there was a pretty strong majority of applicants who felt that their in-person interview experience made them much more likely to rank a program favorably. And so, we took that all into account, and, overall people felt there was a very, very small minority of people who felt that virtual interviews had that same impact. And so next slide, please. So for that subsequent cycle, and this recommendation has stayed the same for this coming cycle as well, is that because both from an applicant standpoint as well as a program standpoint for a strong preference for in-person interviews, Opto has recommended that programs have the opportunity to conduct in-person interviews. So, this is really truly aimed at institutions who may limit different interview formats for programs at their institution, so sort of at an institutional medical school level. I think across the board, programs in otolaryngology do share that desire to, meet you as applicants, for you to get to know them in person as opposed to in a virtual format. And so, while the option is still there for virtual interviews, we have made that recommendation to allow otolaryngology programs that ability to essentially set up in-person interviews, since there are sometimes some institutional restrictions. Next slide. So again, in terms of what is happening this year, we would anticipate, again, pretty much all programs will be interviewing in person, as was the case last year. There are some programs that offered both, or essentially a hybrid. Oftentimes, this was for applicants who had already rotated at their program, or this was their home institution. So that still may be the case this year, where there is sort of a mix of offerings in terms of both in-person and virtual, but you can expect that the vast majority of interviews will be offered in person. Next slide. And I will turn it over to Dr. Yim.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Chow. So we'll transition to talk now about preference signaling. So next slide. So we've been doing signaling for a number of years now, so I do think that it's become a much more understood concept, certainly compared to when we first implemented it. So just to give some historical context, we first started with a low signal approach for the first 3 years, and this was back in the 2020-2021 application cycle. played around with different numbers in consecutive years, went from 5, then to 4, then to 7. And really, for the past 3 years, we've been consistently at a high signal approach at 25 signals. And the results have been really good with those 25 signals. And I think by and large, program directors across the country have been happy with how this has turned out. And we'll delve into some of the benefits of what has happened with this high signal approach. But so you can see some of the positives there. Increased interview opportunities with programs that have been signaled. We saw an improved distribution of interview offers across the country. And we also saw that benefits of signaling carried across different demographic groups. So next slide. Just to give you an idea of what some other specialties are doing. So a fair number are still utilizing a low number of program signals, and you can see the list there. Some specialties utilize what's called a gold-silver approach, where you get a small number of gold signals that are high-value signals, and then a larger number of silver signals. It's something that we as a specialty had discussed potentially adopting, but I do think that we're pretty happy with our high signal approach. Next slide. And so you'll see that most of the surgical subspecialty programs that tend to be comparably competitive across the board, neurosurgery, orthopedics, plastics, urology, as well as, of course, our specialty, ENT, all fall into this high signal group. And again, it seems to have worked out pretty well across the board. Next slide. Okay, this is it's a pretty busy slide. I'll try to unpack this as best as I can. So this is courtesy of Dr. Chang at the University of Missouri in Columbia, and he's been putting this data together for a number of years. Beth, I don't know if it looks like the bottom of the slides are getting cut off just a little bit, but the on the x-axis there, it's just years. So I think the graph starts maybe in 2013, 2014, if I remember correctly. And so over the years, you can see how the applications have changed. And so if we start with the yellow, so if you look at the far right-handed side of the graph at the yellow where the green dot is, so there were 658, in a couple of slides, I'll show data from ERAS that says 666. It's somewhere in that 660 range of total applications. And of that, you can see that the number of applicants who utilized signals was essentially everybody. The next segment, that dark blue, is the total number of applicants in the match. And we'll get into some of these exact numbers here later, but I think just proportionally, it helps to visually give you an idea of just how many applicants ended up submitting rank lists to participate in the ENT match. The next two blue segments are proportionally showing you the total number of US MD seniors plus DO senior applicants in the match. And then the lighter blue, that more turquoise color, is just the US MD senior applicants in the match. The purple, the red line, if you look at the red line, that is the number of ENT positions offered in the country. And so, 10 years ago, we were below 300, and that number has steadily increased over the years. Last year, we were at 403. And then we ended up filling up 402 spots in the initial process, and then one spot ended up filling through SOAP. Next slide. This is a very, very common question every single year. And that question is, do I signal home and away programs? And next slide. The answer is absolutely a resounding yes. Applicants are absolutely expected to signal your home and away rotation programs. The caveat, of course, in this case being unless you wish to prioritize other programs, or for whatever reason you're not particularly interested at matching at your home program or programs that you've done an away rotation at. But assuming that you like the program, that you would be happy to match and train there, you should absolutely signal these both your home and your away programs. Next slide. Why did we do 25 signals? So back when we were still trying to figure out where the magic number was with our low signals, the number of applications still stayed really high, and it was at 79. And I think logically it makes sense, as we're a competitive specialty, and if you're trying to maximize your odds of matching, then the applicants were casting a wide net, and they were applying broadly across the country. And what ended up happening is applicants were spending lots of money to apply to all of these programs. half of which they may not have been seriously interested in. And on the program standpoint, it was a big burden to have to review hundreds and hundreds of applications. And so what has happened over the years with this high signal approach is the number of average programs that students now apply to is now 44. And we've got some data showing that. So let's go to the next slide. So again, courtesy of Dr. Chang, but if you look across the years, otolaryngology is there in the hot pink color. And 2023 was that last year we used that low signal approach, and then 2024 was when we converted to the high signal. You can see the immediate drop in average number of applications submitted per applicant in ENT, but across the board, dermatology, ortho, neurosurgery, we're seeing similar drops in overall number of applications across all competitive specialties. Next slide. Again, another really busy slide, and so I'll try to parse this down. If you look at the top left, so ERAS 2026, and before I forget, this is all publicly available data, and so for those of you who are interested in reviewing this on your own, if you just look up ERAS statistics, it's like the first result that pops up on Google. So there were 660-ish total applicants. That cross applicants are the number of applicants that at least dual applied. So they maybe applied to 2 specialties, maybe more, 3 or 4, but it's a decent amount. So it's about 1/3 of all ENT applicants last year dual applied, at least, or applied to more than one specialty. That middle top graph with the gray, you can see the applicant trend over time. Peaked in 2022, there was a little bit of a dip, and then it's been steadily increasing ever since. As I mentioned before, the average number of applications per applicant has steadily decreased over the years, and we've stabilized around that 44 number over the past 2 years. And then that bottom right, the green, blue, red bar graph there, what it's indicating is the percentage of applicants that are MDs, US MD seniors, or not seniors, just US MDs in general, US DO graduates, and then IMGs. And so you can see that the proportion, again, at least on my view, the slide's getting cut off a little bit, but DO applicants are highlighted there in red. The international graduates are highlighted in blue. You can see that the ratios have remained relatively stable over the years. Next slide. Again, another similarly busy slide. If you look at that top middle where it says average and median applications per program, so this is data showing what the programs are seeing on our end, on the program director side of things. So in 2022, the average program was receiving 424 applications with a median of 459. Fast forward to 2026, the average program is getting 228 with a median of 236. So really, it's cut the number of applications that programs are having to review almost in half. That top right, again, with the cross applications, pretty consistently over the years, there about 1/3 of applicants applying to ENT are applying to at least one additional specialty in the match. And we can go to the next slide. In terms of signal sent, so on the top left, in the middle, you can see it says 99.5% of applicants signaled. So really what this means is that almost every single applicant that is participating in the match is utilizing the signaling system. On the right-hand side, again, the colors are the same. Green are US MD graduates, blue is IMG, red is DO applicants. And you can just see the number of signals that are being sent per each group. So US MDs seem to be utilizing the signaling process much more than DO and IMG applicants are. To that, I would say there's really no reason not to utilize all 25 of your signals, and we'll talk about why. We can go to the next slide. But really, you should utilize every single signal that you have, and the reason why is because of this. So if we start on the bottom right, so it says program counts for this specialty. There's 127 programs in the country. 126 participated in signaling last year. The data that is included in the box and whisker graphs on the left-hand side are from 86 programs. And these 86 programs were included because they offered interviews through Thalamus. And because of that, ERAS had access to this data. And so about 40 programs are not utilizing Thalamus, and they're scheduling interviews somewhere else. But for the 86 programs that did utilize Thalamus, you can see there's such a drastic difference in terms of your interview rate for the programs that use Signal versus the ones that you don't. And so the overall interview rate, if you sent a signal to a program, is around 34%. If you did not send a signal to a program, the odds, or not the odds, but the rate of getting an interview is around 1%. So extremely unlikely, not zero, but highly unlikely that you will receive an interview to a program that you have not signaled. So it stands to reason, really, from an applicant standpoint, you should utilize all 25 signals and try to maximize your chances. Next slide. So ENT is located at the very bottom. So this data table is showing the matched statistics. And again, these data tables are publicly available online. So if you look at ENT, there were 403 positions. 402 were filled. Of those 402 that filled, 355 were MD seniors. 9 were MD graduates, presumably reapplicants. 23 were DO seniors, 2 were DO graduates, 5 US IMGs, and then 8 non-US IMGs, 1 number that went unfilled. And over the years, the number of unfilled spots averages around 1, maybe 2 per year. Next slide. So in conclusion, from an applicant standpoint, again, the recommendation is that you should utilize all 25 of your signals. Do signal your home and away rotation programs, and just know that all programs are automatically opted into this signaling process unless they very specifically opt out. And then if you hit next, Beth, just some for looking ahead in the future from a program standpoint, the call is to increase transparency for applicants. This is obviously going to be very dependent on the program itself. So some programs may choose to volunteer this information that, quote, we do not anticipate interviewing any applicants who did not send us a signal. Other programs may not decide to do that. And so certainly there will be individualistic approaches to that. And that's all I have for program signaling.
Thanks, Dr. Yem. That was a lot of data and a lot of great information. Perfect. I'm going to transition to talk a little about the revised standardized letter of recommendation. So that SLOR, or standardized letter of recommendation, is not a new form that, we've had this for over 10 years now. We decided to revise it. This is not a required letter of recommendation. I think applicants get a little bit confused about it. Faculty that have been writing letters for many years may be used to using this standardized letter, and others who've only used it, maybe written letters for a few years may not. But in terms of reviewing an application, a program director or faculty member we don't require this to be completed, but we would like all of our faculty to utilize this. Most letters of recommendation are with the standardized letter, and then there's an additional paragraph or full written letter afterwards. Others that don't use the standardized letter, they just have a formal, written letter. But you can see what's on here, and you can look at the standardized letter of recommendation. Anyone can access it on the SUO Opto website. What's different? Under qualification, under number 2 there, qualifications for OHNS, some of the wording we changed, it was to compare applicants to other medical students applying within otolaryngology. Previously, it said compare the applicant to other medical students in general. We also changed the graphing and made it maybe a little bit easier to read, going to quintiles instead of what we had before was just like 3 areas that people could mark or identify where the applicant may fall in. Let's go to the next slide. So that first form that we just looked at, pretty much everything else is the same, a lot of it demographic information. These questions, most of it is the same. We added situational awareness and leadership as 2 key areas we thought were great for letter writers to evaluate the applicant. At the very bottom, how confident are you that this applicant will be a successful resident in otolaryngology head and neck surgery? So there's just a different way of answering that question. One of the questions that we removed was likelihood to pursue academic medicine. We know that everyone has a different pathway within their practice and where their goals lie once they get into residency and thereafter. So it's hard for faculty to really judge, and really shouldn't be judging at this point, what someone's likelihood to commit to academic medicine in the future is. So we removed that question. Next slide. And here is an area for written comments, and so faculty can put in their typewritten comments here or add an additional page to the standardized letter of recommendation. So again, the keys are it's available. We really would encourage all faculty, and we'll mention this tomorrow night, all faculty to use this standardized letter, but it's certainly not required for the application. When you ask for your letter of recommendation from your faculty member, all you have to do is provide the materials that they ask for. They'll take it from there, and that's all you have to worry about. So we'll go to the next slide and pass it on to Dr. Comer to end the last segment.
All right, thank you, Brad. I'm going to discuss the combined interview offer day, which was formally implemented by otolaryngology several years ago. Next slide, please, Beth. All right, and so there's two parts of this. There's the recommendations for the programs, and then there's the recommendations for the applicants. So from a program standpoint, Opto has decided that November the 5th at 12 noon will be 12 noon Eastern will be the coordinated release of interview offers. Programs are encouraged as strongly as possible, do not send more offers than interview slots, and do not schedule interviews until after the subsequent weekend. So starting on the 9th of November at 12 noon Eastern, programs can start to schedule interviews. Now, a point of discussion in prior years there have been a few programs who have offered interviews prior to this date. Again, Opto is strongly encouraging all programs to adhere to this for a level playing field, but it has happened in the past. Now, from an applicant standpoint, please do not attempt to schedule interviews prior to 12 noon Eastern on the 9th. And the reason for this is that we purposely have put in this 4-day period of time for you to decompress a little bit and not feel like you have to constantly refresh your email and hit send for accepting the application or accepting the interview invite. And please do not hold on to conflicting interview offer or interviews that you don't intend to complete. That's been known as hoarding interviews in the past. And just to give everybody as great a shot as possible for the greatest number of interviews, we ask that you don't try to schedule conflicting interviews. Next slide, please. All right. After the initial interviews are offered and they're accepted, additional interviews will be offered by positions as they're available by programs. Second look open houses may be offered by programs at their discretion. Opto has decided not to make an official statement regarding this. And there is the interview calendar that Brad had mentioned earlier that is on the SUOAO Opto website. This is a work in progress because this does require input from the programs. So next slide, please. And here's a list of the online resources again. Next slide. All right, and now we're going to start the formal Q&A. I'm going to have Dr. Da Silva kind of be the MC on this. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat, raise your hand, and we will try to get to them one by one. Thank you.
Yeah, so thanks, Dr. Comer, and thanks to all of our panelists. A lot of information there. So first question that's already been entered, do you have data on the number of dual applicants that matched into ENT versus another field they applied to? We didn't see that data today. I don't have that for you. Our panelists, have you seen that data for dual applicants?
I'm not sure that it's available. So I saw that question pop up and I was perusing the NRMP match statistics. I don't see that. And that's one of those things where if the NRMP doesn't provide it, there's no way on our end for us to be able to parse that out. So I don't know if we're going to be able to answer that question, unfortunately.
Yeah, that was my understanding as well. Thanks for clarifying that. Feel free to jump in with questions. We're here. We want to make sure that this is a transparent process. Certainly feel free to reach out to any of us. You'll have our emails. It's in that resource list if you have questions thereafter. Do you recommend tailoring personal statements to specific programs? Let me just give you a little history on this. There were program-specific personal statements previously, and that was something that was encouraged. That's not something that we encourage now. That's additional work that's not necessary. You're already signaling programs. And so I would say, no, it's not necessary, certainly. Now, if there's one program that you didn't get a chance to rotate at for an away rotation, but you have maybe a significant tie to it. I'll just give you a very simple example. Every summer you went and visited your grandmother in a certain city, and that's where that program's located, and you're really familiar with that city, and it just wouldn't come out in any other way in the application. You could maybe mention that you're very familiar with that location or what have you. Based on that, it brings kind of ties you in, gives you something else to learn about you. But certainly don't do that for all the programs, only if there's really like something very specific for that program. Any other panelists that want to answer that differently?
I'll concur with what you said, Brad. For the applicants that are out there or potential future applicants, one thing that happened with the individualized letters is a lot of times people were kind of cut and pasting from websites, and program directors knew it. This conversation happened several Novembers in a row at the SUO Opto meeting. And so I really do think this takes the pressure off the applicants, because that personal statement allows us to get some insight to who you are. And then it takes that pressure off of trying to, let me get my niche with this particular program.
So thank you. On ERAS, we see the option to selective narrative letter of standardized letter. Which one are we recommend to select? And so some specialties have a standardized letter that's already in the application process. Ours gets uploaded when you send your letter of recommendation request to your faculty member. Then we can upload that to your application. So that's not something you need to worry about. So it's just a standardized letter when you choose that. Should we specifically ask letter writers for a standardized letter recommendation, or should we just defer to them to choose a format they'd like to use? Just let them choose the format that they'd like to use. Those who've been writing these know that well, and we have communicated that we have a new revised standardized letter, so we hope people are excited about it. Remove some of the things that maybe people questioned before and updated it. Any other answers from our panelists? Is that pretty straightforward? Okay. I am a mentor. Will this webinar be available? Yes, this webinar will be available and recorded for future use and review. Is there utility in applying to more than 25 programs if the interview yield is so low? If so, is there a resource that can be used to determine which programs do or do not interview non-signaling applicants? Dr. Chow, do you want to answer this?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, what I would typically counsel the students that I advise is that, if there are programs where, there isn't, based on the statistics, it's not a completely 0% chance of getting an interview, but it's, so, it is if you're potentially maybe a marginal candidate, or if there's a program that might be newer or things like that, it could be worthwhile to potentially apply to that program if you've already utilized your 25 signals. That being said, I think of the students that I, spoke with in the last couple of cycles, I personally don't know anybody who received an interview from a program that they applied to if they applied, slightly beyond 25. But again, I think that's just reflected in that 1% statistic. So, I think you could, but would you apply significantly beyond 25 signals? I think that's probably not in your best financial interests.
Great, thank you. Someone said, could you repeat what you said about the letter writer is given the option to choose the standardized letter recommendation versus narrative letter when they are sent the invite on ERAS, or would they prepare the standardized letter of recommendation themselves using the template if they know about it? Yes, hopefully your letter writers know about it. We've communicated this a lot, and it's existed for many years now. We just have revised it, and we've informed people. We'll inform people again tomorrow night on the webinar. We just would like everyone to use it. what percentage use it? Probably about 60%, I would say. And correct me if you guys think I'm wrong on that, but some just have a narrative letter, and others use both the standardized letter with some narrative. Maybe it's 1 to 4 paragraphs, depending on the length on their standardized letter. So just let them decide. They'll know how to do that. If a home away program says no need to signal them, is that fine? Brett, you want to answer this?
Yeah, so Opto, yes, I'll say strongly encourages all programs, home and away, to request signaling. And this is a bigger issue than just this year. We are trying to get accurate data for several years in order to be able to inform applicants the best we can in terms of what the statistics say. And so that's where this becomes important. It's a bigger issue than just trying to get an extra signal or two. And so that's the Opto stance on this.
On ERAS, when we request a letter, we either select narrative or a standardized letter recommendation. Regardless of what we choose, they can opt to include or not include the standardization. Yeah, you would select the narrative letter, and then they will upload the letter that they choose to upload. Hopefully, it's a standardized letter recommendation.
I think where some of the confusion might be coming from is that I think this year ERAS is piloting standardized letters that are embedded in the application for certain specialties, but actually otolaryngology is not included in that pilot. And so essentially when the letter writer is uploading their letter, it's purely uploaded as a PDF. It may include the standardized letter, it may just be a narrative letter, it might be a combination of both, but it's not going to mess up the letter upload process. I think that is just showing up for applicants because for certain specialties, they have like an actual built-in form to fill out that standardized letter for other specialties that are not ENT. So just as Dr. DePhil Silva is saying, like just select the narrative letter, it'll be fine.
We'll for clarifying that. That was well said. I appreciate that. It is confusing, I understand, for you and for the students it is. Sorry, we'll make sure I don't miss one. If interview season begins in November, when do programs generally stop conducting interviews? Generally, it goes from November to the very end of January. Often there are some interviews around February 1st or 2nd. And so during that time period. Are there programs that require having the standardized letter format to submit an application? No.
And just one more comment, I guess, on the letters that may be helpful for applicants is the vast majority of letter writers, even if we fill out a standardized letter, almost everybody also includes a narrative component to that. And so, the standardized letter, it's helpful for us PDs when we review applications to have something that we're familiar with, that we can utilize. But really, the vast majority of letter writers, even with the standardized, will type something personal included with the standardized letter.
Dr. Comer, you want to take the next one? In that 4-day period between interview date, release, and responses, what do you recommend the student do? Are there proactive tips?
Yeah, so I think the key thing is this gap between the interview offers and the acceptance was intended to take the pressure off so that applicants could look at the offers they received, try to stratify in terms of, okay, here's the top ones I want to go to, and so on and so forth. And then if I have conflicts, then I can notify those programs on that Monday and let them know that, no, I'm going to decline this interview offer. The other thing, quite frankly, is there's a lot of travel plans that need to be made, especially with a lot of in-person interviews. And so it gives you that time to do that too, because we know the interview season can be quite expensive. And so that was kind of part of the goal of this. I will tell applicants we would strongly discourage you from contacting programs early, okay? And a lot of programs view this as ability to follow instructions. And so, that can be in a proactive way or a negative way. And so we would definitely encourage you not to contact those programs early unless there is some specific question related to something other than acceptance or declining the offer.
Next question is, when are you hoping to have the interview calendar complete by on the Opto website? So this just comes down to programs going on and submitting their interview dates. Some programs, many programs may not have actually decided their interview dates yet. Probably many have, and It's just a matter of them submitting those. So that occurs over the coming, 3 or 4 months. Sometimes programs wait till October to submit those, or even the 1st of November. So you're seeing them right around the time of the interview release date. Apologies for the plug and the delayed comment, but in regards to the first question, Dr. Jenny Chen and I wrote a paper on dual applicants and found that of those with non-missing data, 22.5% matched into ENT. Okay, thank you. Is there any advantage to scheduling interviews earlier in the year versus later in the cycle? Dr. Yim, you want to answer that?
Yeah. I mean, probably, not particularly. It's a busy season. A lot of folks are busy trying to juggle all the interview offers that are coming in and trying to figure out what works best with your travel schedule, along with trying to balance what's happening at your home program as well too. So, really, I don't think that there's any significant difference depending on the timing of the year in which you interview.
Are we notified of the interview dates for specific programs when the invites are released, or do we have to wait for these until the 9th? No, that's the whole point of it. You're provide those dates so that you can start to try to generate your own interview calendar based on how many places you receive interviews. Say you receive 10 interviews and on November 5th, you can start to look at all those dates and see how it lines up, and then work on trying to schedule all of those beginning at noon on the 9th. Okay. How does the interview response work? Do we send an email with our preference from the offered dates? Do we only plan to attend the interview if our selection gets approved? Dr. Chow, you want to answer that?
Yeah, so for most programs, like Dr. Yim presented, are using Thalamus. So basically, that's just an online system through AMC they partner with. Basically, you essentially you get the offers on that Friday, and then you respond at that time, essentially when interview offers open. There are still some programs who do this process manually, and so yes, you would send an email, I guess generally a timed email with your preferences. And then, yeah, the recommendation is not to hold on to interview slots that you do not plan to attend. And so, essentially that program will confirm with you whether the date that you selected, either via email or via Thalamus, was approved, and then you can plan to attend.
What would you say is the average number of interviews an applicant receives? I'm not quite sure how to answer that question. I think, there's some data that shows that getting a certain number of interviews increases your chances of matching. I've seen data that's been anywhere from like 8 to 12 interviews, of taking that number of interviews, I should say. Sometimes there's a conflict and you can't take all of those interviews that were offered. Panelists, do you have another answer to this? It's hard to take. I'll just add, it's hard to take more than 15 interviews just because of the timing, the condensed schedule. A lot of them overlap. I'll just say that much.
In the pre-COVID era, meaning the pre-virtual interview era, the number was 9 interviews, resulted in about a 97% chance of matching. The panelists, please correct me if you know of anything that's more updated than that. The data kind of got skewed a little bit because of virtual interviews becoming prominent for a few years and then kind of backing off again. So,
yeah, I think, Brett, to that comment, I want to say last year when you, and again, this is all publicly available, you can get on NRMP and pull the graph. I want to say it was maybe 12 interviews that gave you somewhere around that 90, low 90% chance of matching. So that's kind of the magic number of interviews that you want to aim for.
Yeah, one of the comments, says that right here that, just attended a seminar from my own medical school an hour ago with this data. I believe 90% chance of matching with 12 interviews, and then goes up from there. I don't want to skip one. At what time during the application process do we signal? Is it when we first send out our applications? Yes, when you complete your application and you submit your application, you will choose the programs you signal at that time. When the interviews are sent out, are the date and time given? So the exact times may not, but the date certainly is. They may start interviews at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. They'll provide that information later. The point of that is it's really hard to do, and I think pretty much impossible to do 2 interviews in the same day. It's certainly possible to do 2 interviews back-to-back days, so like a Tuesday and then a Wednesday at 2 different programs. Obviously, you have to think about travel and those types of things, but plan on potentially being there all day from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Potentially.
And Brad, to add on to that too, I know there are pockets of the country, typically around the bigger cities, where programs will try to coordinate dates so that they know people will be traveling to the area, and they, therefore double up in hotel rooms or Airbnbs or whatever as well. So keep that in mind with the application process.
I think there are a couple more questions in the Q&A section, Brett, if you're able to see that one.
Thank you. I didn't even see that. Sorry. Since ENT is opting out of geographic signals, does this mean that, in your perspective, programs are trying to move away from weighing an applicant's geographic ties? If not, how are programs assessing geographic ties when screening for interviews, if not via customized personal statements? So ENT has not participated in geographic signals in the past. We have opted out last year. We did it again. We find that we're looking for the best candidates. And so we want to look at your application fully and not necessarily where you're coming from. We assume that if you signaled us and you applied to us, you want to be in our program. That's kind of the way we approach that. I don't want to speak for the other panelists, but I think that's how most program directors around the country feel that way. Dr. Chow, how would you answer that?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I remember, I think the very first year that this became available in ERAS, most programs in ENT were not really paying attention to it because most applicants were saying that they were interested in any geographic region. And honestly, for the applicants that did specify a geographic region, it was concordant with that program, or, and if it was discordant, it was kind of confusing because, if that applicant signaled but didn't send a geographic preference, like what does that actually mean? And so we actually didn't really find that information very helpful. And just as Dr. De Silva is saying, I think the signal actually is what communicates the most interest. That if you have signaled that program, that kind of implicitly means that you're also interested in that geographic region.
If an applicant receives interview invites they genuinely want to attend, but the dates conflict, should they contact the programs for alternatives? Or in this situation, do they have to give up one or more of the invites? Dr. Comer, do you want to answer this in terms of like hoarding interviews and also just being able to schedule these appropriately?
Yeah, and honestly, there always is a stratification process. You have your top tiers that you're looking at, and otherwise, what I will say is that most places are going to offer between 3 to probably 5 or 6 interview dates, and so it would be fairly unusual to have so many conflicts that you absolutely can't get to somewhere. Now, that may mean you have to give away another lesser program somewhere. There's nothing wrong with reaching out to programs and saying, here's a situation, I've got a conflict, is there any chance I can come on a different date? Because there are programs and we're included in this, that are definitely flexible, where instead of interviewing, let's say 8 in a day, they may take it up to 9. So there's nothing wrong with reaching out. But I will also say that if a program says, hey, no, that's not going to happen, then I would not push the issue too much at that point.
Yeah, I'll just add, unfortunately, there are conflicts and you have to choose. And so we just encourage you to try to choose early if you can. I know there's a lot of angst about that, choosing between 2 programs, but you want to certainly be kind to your co-applicants and be able to allow someone else to take an interview. And the other thing is you don't want to cancel an interview too late. We want to be able to get those applicants in. So programs will tell you, what's kind of a good leeway in terms of cancellation. Certainly should give them, several weeks so they can, book a trip or have someone else come in. Does the hometown section on ERAS count for anything from your experience? No, it's just another identifier of listing where you're from, and so we can learn more about you. It may not be obvious where you grew up, based on anything else. You'll have your undergraduate, medical school and any other graduate work you did or employment work you did before. But any other questions that you have?
Brad, there's one more in the
Yeah,
Q&A section, I
thank you.
think.
Good now, thanks. What are your thoughts on applicants sending letters of intent or letters of interest during the application cycle? Are they generally viewed as helpful? And is there an ideal time to send them? I'll speak from my program because I think that's all I can do here and let the panelists answer this question. So um, they're not really helpful, to be honest. They're great to hear. When someone sends me a letter and says that they're ranking, Ohio State #1, that's wonderful to hear. We get excited about that. And we're glad that someone wants to train with us, obviously, but it doesn't change our rank list or how we view the interview day and such. I've been a program director for 15 years. We've never changed. I tell our students this. We've never changed our rank list based on someone else's interest in us per se. So I don't know that they're that helpful. I think, but I can only speak for our program. I can't speak for the others. If you're going to do it, it's probably best. I would give you two things of advice. You could do it right after you're done interviewing or when you've kind of made your decision. And I would only send it to one program. There's no reason to send it to multiple programs. We are a small specialty. People might misread it or misinterpret it. And if you send letter of intent to 3 programs and they love you and they already had you #1 on your rank list and they're actually 3rd on your list and you don't match there, that's going to leave a sour taste in their mouth. They're going to be upset about that. That's happened to us before, where someone told us that, and we had someone ranked to match, and they didn't match with us. So they obviously either changed their mind later, which is fine. You can do that. That's why you have to be careful about sending a letter of intent. Dr. Chow, do you want to weigh in on this as well?
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better, honestly. It is a nice thing to hear, but I agree that you really one is all that you should be sending, and yeah, just send it to the one that you are actually ranking to match.
And another point I'll add on to this is think bigger picture than just matching into the specialty, because down the road you may be looking for jobs as a faculty member. And to Brad's point, we had that happen to us a few years ago, and sometimes it may cause difficulty getting jobs in the future. So.
This is an important question. I'm glad you asked it. So, Dr. Yim, I want to hear your thoughts here as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely agree with you guys. Just to reiterate that point, I mean, if you do send it, just send it to one and send it because out of just a genuine feeling and because you really connected with that program. And but I think a lot of times, especially when I counsel students, I feel like there's this unspoken pressure to like if you don't send letters of intent, maybe you're missing out, or maybe it puts you at a disadvantage compared to other applicants. And, just to clarify for everybody, I really don't think that's the case. And so, I mean, if you're going to send it, send it to one program. But yeah, by and large, I agree with everybody else. It generally doesn't change things.
The next question is a good one as well, and kind of similar in that, thanks for updating that, Tiffany. People say to have mentors make calls on our behalf for our top program. Do you have any advice on the timing of this? If I receive a call from a chair, program director, another faculty mentor from another program that so-and-so loved our program, is ranking us #1, it does 2 things. It's great to hear, just like that letter of intent. It makes us feel really great that they enjoyed their interview day and that we mesh well with their goals. It's also great to hear for the applicant that someone wants to vouch for them and go above and beyond and make a call for them and really thinks highly of them. And so that's great to hear as well. But again, it doesn't change our rank list. At least I'm only going to speak for our program at Ohio State. So it's wonderful here. Timing on this is, there's not really great timing. I would say after the interviews are done and this is your top program, you basically have 4 weeks to make your rank list. The same time frame for making your rank list is the same for the programs. So we have the same timeline. Faculty panelists, do you have any thoughts on this? Mentors making a call. Is this any different than a letter of intent, Dr. Chow?
No, I agree with you, Dr. De Silva.
Okay.
It's basically a great thing to hear, and it's great to connect with a colleague. And I do think there is a richness in when your colleague, when one of your faculty mentors is bragging about you as an applicant, and it's great to hear that. But yeah, it generally doesn't change, where you stand in on the rank list or anything like that. But I think it is always great to hear if your mentor wants to do that for you.
Any other input? Are you guys good? Okay. Our programs weighing AOA status less compared to prior years. How helpful is it to have AOA versus how harmful is it to not have this? It's hard for me to say what people weigh. We look at the entire application, and it's another marking of an accomplishment. So it is a great thing. Our programs weighing it less. It's really hard for me to say. I think it's one data point out of so many. Dr. Yim, what would you say?
Yeah, I can answer this question. So I have a senior faculty member in my department who historically loved AOA status. And over the years, I've had to convince this faculty member that we can't necessarily use AOA nearly as much as we used to, perhaps maybe 10 years ago, because a lot of programs don't have AOA, or they're changing their guidelines just in terms of who qualifies for AOA. And so really I think what AOA means nowadays is very different from what it meant 10 years ago. And so I can just say openly, for my program, that is something that we historically used to include as in part of our internal grading rubric, and now that we have completely moved away from. And so.
Any other comments? I think that was well said. So, okay, if a student wants to match at their home program, at what point, if any, should they express that to their program director? I mean, I think it's when you've made that decision. Most of the time, it's after you have completed all of your interviews. I mean, I certainly wouldn't tell your home program you want to match there, and then you haven't even completed your interviews. What if you like some other place a little bit better? So I would be careful to say something like that until you've completed all your interviews and really made a thoughtful decision. Dr. Comer, you have any other thoughts on that?
I think that's an excellent point, Brad, because it's the old thing, you don't know what you don't know, and you may go on the interview trail and find a culture that you just love somewhere, or have an absolutely fantastic niche for training in a certain part of the specialty. And so I agree. I would hold off on that until you're absolutely sure that's the one.
Okay, we have another question there. So, for applicants at regional campuses, could a letter of recommendation be requested from a regional faculty ENT they rotate with, who may be members of a private practice, or should they come only from faculty at the main home institution? Dr. Yim, you want to answer this?
Yeah, I think it's important to get letters from faculty members who know you well, and faculty members that can write you a letter that is very insightful, that is more than just a regurgitation of your CV, I think is always beneficial. And so, I think the people that you request letters from, ideally you would have spent a decent amount of time with them so that they would have gotten to know you on a personal level and subsequently be able to write you a strong letter based off of that.
Sounds great. Thank you. Got a couple more minutes if anyone has any other questions. Again, I'll just say, our emails are available on the SUO ADO Opto website. Feel free to reach out if you have questions afterwards. We're in this organization because we love working with students and mentoring. We want people to have the right information. We want to be transparent, and so feel free to reach out. That's why we're here. Okay, if there's no other questions, I'd like to thank all of our panelists. I'd like to thank Beth for running the slides and helping to organize this webinar. And again, it's recorded, so if you have want to review something later on or share with a friend, feel free to. And really appreciate you all joining us tonight. So good luck, and we look forward to seeing you soon in the interview cycle. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.